Setting a boundary with a friend can feel really uncomfortable. You don't want to let them down. You don't want to feel guilty, but you know that something needs to change. Setting a boundary with a friend isn't about rejecting a friend, it is about protecting what you need. So, today, let's talk about how to set boundaries, how to communicate them, and most importantly, how to stick to them. First, let's talk about why boundaries matter. Because boundaries are put in place to protect your time, maybe your energy, maybe your mental health, or maybe protect you from a situation or something that you just don't feel comfortable with. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with setting a boundary, especially when you recognize some of those things. It's okay to put a limit on it. And let's be honest, not everyone is always going to have your best interests at heart. Sometimes people are going to prefer what's convenient for them or what's preferable to them. And then those are the times that you might have to set a boundary around certain things. What are a few examples of different types of boundaries? A couple examples right off the top are time and availability boundaries, maybe work and life change boundaries that you might have to put in place. And I think another one important that is just as important are social and behavior boundaries. So let's talk about the time and availability boundary. When my best friend's children were young, I know there was a few times where I would call her because I just happened to have time at that time, but it was maybe during the time that her and her family were sitting down to dinner. And she just said to me, "Hey, we're sitting down to dinner. I can't talk right now." I totally respected that. Now, this wasn't a boundary that her and I ever talked about, but after maybe that happening once or twice and her saying, "Hey, it's dinner time," understood, totally understand why she wants to have that time with her family, to sit down and chat, have that family time over dinner. I'm not going to cross that boundary. You and I will talk later on or tomorrow or something like that. And then there's work and schedule and life change boundaries, right? Maybe your life has changed because you've taken a new job, or maybe you're having children. Maybe this is a boundary where you have a new child and you are constantly not maybe asking for advice, but somebody is just constantly saying, like, "Hey, you should do this, you should do that. I have children, I know this," and that type of thing. And while you respect their input, you might be feeling a little overwhelmed as a new parent because I'm sure, I don't have children, but I'm sure that we get a lot of advice from a lot of different places. So that might be some type of boundary where you need to talk to your friend and say, "I appreciate every bit of advice that you're giving me, but like I have a lot to deal with right now, becoming a new parent, we're figuring it out. So, just support me, but I don't necessarily need all of the advice you're trying to give me." That could be like just a quick example of a life changes advice. And then the third one I mentioned, and this isn't all encompassing these three examples of all boundaries, but I think another one that's important is social and behavioral boundaries. Do you have a group of friends maybe that you go out with frequently or maybe infrequently? And maybe there's somebody in that group that generally maybe does something that makes you feel uncomfortable in some sort of way, or every time you go out, there always seems to be some type of issue, an argument, somebody not getting along, and this one person is already involved or always involved. That might be the type of thing where you might want to set a boundary, because sometimes when you go out and you just don't have fun because of it, right? So that might be something. I know one, I'll say maybe behavioral boundary that I have in place, and nobody really ever crosses this, is one of my pet peeves is someone showing up to my house unannounced. If somebody does that, the first thing I am going to say to them is, hey, I really don't care for people showing up unannounced. That's a boundary I will set with almost anyone. There are exceptions. If it's my family and they're in the area, absolutely. If it's an emergency situation, absolutely. But nowadays, we can basically let someone know we're in the area or we're stopping by. So, that's a boundary that I have. And like I said, it really doesn't happen. But if it did, I would absolutely say something about it. Once you've decided that you need to put a boundary in place, how do you communicate that boundary? I think the first thing is that you want to be absolutely clear about what you need. You want to be respectful to your friend, but you do not have to be apologetic. Because remember, you're putting this boundary in place because it's something that you have determined that you need. I think another thing is use statements that begin with I as opposed to you, right? So I am unable to talk to you every day at this time, as opposed to you always call me at the wrong times. You see how that kind of shifts it to you are stating this is something you need, and you're not necessarily projecting blame toward that person. I think too, you should explain the why of your feeling that you need to put this boundary in place, but don't do that when it makes sense. Explain the why when it makes sense, but don't over explain it just because you might feel a little bit guilty. Maybe you can offer an alternative if it's appropriate. Maybe you say, I can't do this thing every Saturday like we used to do, but maybe I can do once a month. Remember, you're not trying to control what your friend does. You are just clearly explaining to them what you are comfortable with. How do we stick to our boundaries? Now that we have our boundaries in place, this is one of the most important parts, I think, because you really need to stick to your boundaries to protect yourself and whatever reason you put those boundaries in place. And you may have to communicate your boundary more than once. And that's not because your friend maybe is purposely ignoring your boundaries, but it could be because they become so used to a pattern that they may literally just honestly forget that maybe there's a new boundary in place. And don't give in or remove the boundary just because you might feel guilty or something like that. Because remember the reason, again, that you put the boundary in place to begin with. It's to protect some area of your life that you feel it's necessary to protect by this. If someone continuously ignores your boundaries and continues to overstep them, that might bring up an entirely different issue. And I'm talking about the person who does it on purpose, knows your boundaries are in place, not your friend who's maybe getting ready or getting used to a new pattern. We actually did an episode on this, when your friends don't respect your boundaries, and I'll drop that in the link below for you. And I think another thing too that is important, especially because sometimes these conversations can be a little bit stressful, is match the conversation to the friend that you are talking to. If you are talking to someone who is your inner circle, a very close friend, or maybe your best friend, those conversations do require a little bit more time and effort to make sure that you're both on the same page with whatever boundary you're setting. But if you're, say, have a casual friend, someone that you see every once in a while, maybe not somebody that you're super close to, then sometimes you might not need a conversation at all. Maybe they are doing something, saying something, acting a certain way that you just don't feel comfortable with. In that instance, you might be able to just step back maybe decline invitations or something like that, and kind of step away without really having a deep conversation about it. So depending on what level of friend it is, really is going to kind of drive what types of conversations you have, if any, about your boundaries. Putting your needs first does not mean that you are putting your friendship last. Sometimes you just need boundaries to protect certain areas of your life. Have you ever had to set boundaries in a friendship? I would love to hear it if you'd like to share it in the comment below. And if you enjoy these conversations about friendships and everything that comes with them, I would love to have you subscribe to the Friendship Formula. We will see you in the next one. Peace.